Welcome. Got a nice cup of tea today. Would not be my normal beverage of choice, but it's dry Jan, so tea it is. Quick sidebar, attitude about alcohol really changing. Gen Z, not into it. According to a World Financial Report, Gen Z consumes around 20% less alcohol than millennials, who themselves drink less than older generations. So who knows? Maybe gummies have killed booze. Good for them anyway. No shortage of research on the negative health impacts of too much alcohol. But anyway, gummies aside, I'm feeling philosophical today. How about you? How are you doing? I ended episode 1 with a question for you. I asked, if I had a magic wand and you could be placed in the life of your dreams, what would it look like? Would you have a career or a job? If you didn't have to work, would you still want to contribute in some way? If so, what would you do? What if the only thing you had to worry about is learning as much as you could about yourself and the world? Would that mission be enough for you? And if not, is it because it seems too easy or too hard? So I want to read some of your comments before I share my own response. So Lauren from Doylestown wrote, I would give all my money away to help others. Yeah, okay. Nice. We see you, Lauren. You're a saint. Jay from Jersey City wrote, become an F1 racer and tour the world. Fair enough. Honest. I like that. Own your not saintness, Jay, my fellow Jerseyite. K-Man63 wrote, I would buy a private island and live alone with just my friends and family and enjoy life until I died. I have to admit, I don't hate the idea of having a private island. Uber bougie, sure, but honest. So for me, if I could do anything, I would buy a lot of property with a health and wellness facility where people could do transformation work for free. It would also double as an animal sanctuary. All people and animals welcome. So that's on the vision board. We'll see what happens in 2025. Moving on to today's show. I spent 30 years building a career where I had the privilege of learning how to design and execute complex change strategies for large corporations. In the business world, catalysts for change are obvious. A new product or service, a new technology, or maybe a leadership change, a reorganization, right? Cost reduction play. In a business context, the motivation underpinning those things is, of course, spoiler alert, profit. That's how that world works. But what about you? In a personal context, how do you think about catalysts and change? What are the kinds of things in your life which have kicked you in the ass and caused you to grow? Okay, so personal story. When I was in my 20s, I was dating a really nice guy. Let's call him Manny. He was 7 years older than me. He was also my first serious boyfriend, though I wasn't his. And I can remember at the time that this really bothered me. It was just insecurity on my part. And I knew who his ex-girlfriend was. We had all gone to school together. And when you're young and immature and inexperienced, you think about that stuff way more than you need to or really should. So after a year, me and Manny, we thought we were onto something. You know how it is when it clicks and you both feel equally invested in things and agree that you're together. We even looked at rings at a local jewelry store in year 1. Looking back, I was not at all ready for this relationship. And after a while, Manny figured this out. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to talk to me, and I was too naive to realize there was a problem. So fast forward to the second year of the relationship where things started to go downhill. Afraid of conflict, Manny did that passive-aggressive thing where he slowly withdrew, hoping I was smart enough to pick up on his unhappiness so he didn't need to take accountability for sharing his feelings with me. I wasn't picking up on any of his hints, so this situation continued. We were living together, but over the months, he started staying at his parents' house more and more, always making excuses like he was tired and he fell asleep, or he had to help his mom with something. It's stupid looking back now, and I was just so clueless. I can only guess I was in denial, seeing the relationship falling apart and not really wanting to deal with it or knowing how to deal with it. But eventually I got the message and I confronted Manny, who admitted he wanted to end things. When I pressed him why, he gave me a list of reasons, things I was doing or ways I was being that he wasn't happy with. And being immature and in my early 20s, I responded by saying, "I'm so sorry, I'll change." Manny was skeptical, and luckily for both of us, he didn't take the bait. But I was desperate. Boy, was I desperate. Do you remember the first big heartbreak you ever had? I think there's one big heartbreak which really devastates you. And Manny was mine. At one point, I remember, this is embarrassing, physically dropping to my knees and begging him to stay. I told him I'd go to therapy and fix everything on his list. I would become whoever he needed me to be. And I did go to therapy. But as you already guessed, Manny and I were finished. And after a while, I stopped therapy too. It's a tricky thing to try to change for someone else. People can act as catalysts in our life, but we can't change for them. I have a friend who gave up sugar last year, and he's inspiring me to do the same. That's along with my dry January. I already know intellectually all the good reasons why I should give up sugar. But the fact that my friend has done it and is sustaining it is motivating to me. He's inspired me, but I'm not going to change for him. People in treatment for addiction talk about this. Lasting change must come from within, rather than being solely motivated by someone else. Internal motivation fosters accountability and ownership of the actions you need to take to achieve whatever it is you're looking to do. Now, this doesn't mean that, for example, family interventions or ultimatums can't sometimes be a catalyst to get people, for example, into treatment. But that's like being dropped off at the foot of the mountain. To go up, you alone will need to make a choice to actually go do it. For me personally, it took a while for me to be ready to really start the path toward figuring out who I am and what my place in the world was supposed to be. And by the way, this process is still happening to this day. I don't have it all figured out. It would have been super efficient if the breakup with Manny in my mid-20s rocked me out of my sleeping state, but it didn't. And I don't think it happens for most people that way. I mean, some people have one big catalyst, and this season on the show, we're going to have some amazing stories of people who had it happen for them like that. But it hasn't happened that way for me. I think for some people, certainly for me, it's thousands of mini catalysts affecting us every day, sometimes even subconsciously. A little seed is planted, and then without your knowing it, a year or so later, things start to grow. And this is why I think it's super critical that you're very careful about what you let into your environment. You are precious, and your energy is heavily impacted by what you allow around you. You are a freshly painted white room. Be wise about who you let into it. That's not to say that sometimes catalysts can't also be negative things, which we use to motivate us. I've been there. Some people find having a great big chip on your shoulder to be powerful fuel. In order to launch a rocket into space, you need a dense and efficient propellant to push out over the Earth's gravity and get into orbit. These kind of propellants are used only for short-term use, though. Using resentment as a catalyst can help you break out of your orbit, but you can't subsist on it long-term. As I spoke about in episode 1, and what I think you already know, is that the world doesn't want you to figure out who you are. People who are self-aware aren't so easy to manipulate. If you feel good about yourself physically, then that limits the number of things I can sell you. I think a key step in the process of becoming who you really are and understanding your life's purpose is being 1,000% aware of the need to unlearn societal conditioning and dropping both toxic narratives and limiting beliefs. These will keep you from finding your personal truth. Do you know what these things look like and how they affect you?
Hey there, listeners. Quick pause for a not-so-boring legal note. This podcast is all about sharing stories, ideas, and a sprinkle of chaos. But remember, it's not professional advice. If you're planning to make big moves based on what you hear, chat with a lawyer, psychiatrist, accountant, or that one friend who reads the terms and conditions. We're here for the laughs and insights, not the lawsuits. Now, back to the fun stuff.
The fact that you're listening to this podcast tells me two things. One, that you're curious about finding meaning in the world, and two, you know that this is something that you're going to have to figure out on your own. You know that these answers aren't in a relationship, a job, a car, a lip gloss, whatever. The fact that you already know this is huge. You're already ahead of the pack and in a really powerful position. There are lots and lots of people who aren't anywhere near where you are. I say this not to encourage comparison, but to give you an opportunity to be proud of yourself. You're a spiritual being living in a physical world. You have to do all sorts of practical things like earn money to provide for yourself and maybe others, buy things like food and shelter and clothing. You're also a social being, so you have to learn how to make and maintain relationships. And you have to navigate a shitload of information coming at you 24 hours a day. The very fact that you're even curious about breaking out of the, let's call it matrix, is a sign that you're ready to do just that. The first step to do this, well, I believe the first step is to commit to yourself that you are here on this earth to experience and learn and to grow and evolve. Period. That's got to be your primary directive, your operating system. It guides you in every aspect of your being. And by the way, learning about yourself, it can be rather unpleasant. I'm not gonna lie. I've done some work on myself where the things I started to see really hurt my feelings. It's counterintuitive to run toward things that will be hard and painful. This is why most of us don't run triathlons. I'm recording this in January, the most popular month of the year for new gym memberships. By February, many people will stop going or cancel their membership altogether. Why? Because everyone wants to be fit, healthy, and attractive, but it's difficult work, and not everybody is going to have the strength and self-discipline to press on when it gets hard. The next step in unlearning societal conditioning so you can take the right path is to embrace, fully, deeply embrace, that you have to do the work by yourself. Look, having supportive people around you is important. I also recommend finding good teachers or therapists or mentors to help. But that walk up the mountain is going to be all you. Another thing to consider when you decide to break away from toxic narratives is that you'll be tempted by your attachments. This is a big challenge for those of us who live, particularly in the West, in consumer-obsessed societies. I spent a good part of my career being way too over-identified with my jobs. I liked having sexy titles and working for prestigious firms or name-brand corporates. My externally focused mind was attached to my work persona. Then, at one stage, I took a sabbatical to work on a book, and I remember how difficult I found it to go to parties and have conversations with people. In New York City, where I live, there is no shortage of people who are over-identified with their jobs, people who are hustlers, working 60, 80 hours a week, and spending most of what they earn on an apartment so they can live near that job so they can afford to pay for the apartment. So it makes sense when you go to parties in New York that the first question people will ask you is, "What do you do?" This is a form of assessment too. Our value as people, unfortunately, can often be reduced to our jobs and the power, money, and influence we have. People who ask you this, they're assessing your value. You're a form of currency to them because they look good by association, or maybe it's because you can do something for them. Back when I took this sabbatical, I became very aware of how insecure I was not having a good enough answer to the question, "What do you do?" Conversely, when I held big executive roles in big companies, I had no shortage of people offering to take me out to lunch and dinner. So the lesson is the job, the stuff, whether it be a house, cars, your youth, whatever, it isn't who you are. These things are also fleeting, so it's really dangerous to get too attached to them. Finally, the last thing to consider when unlearning toxic narratives and societal conditioning is the delusion that you are broken and what you need or are searching for is outside of you. This is a hard one because it's reinforced externally as much as it is internally. As a potential consumer, you're being targeted all the time. There's a grand effort in the world to feed you lots of information in every possible, conceivable way to convince you that perfection is attainable, you don't have it, but it exists outside of you. Internally, you're going to buy into this because it's a hell of a lot easier to buy that amazing hair conditioner your stylist told me about. Sidebar, true, I actually did that a couple months ago. It was like $35. I was like, what am I doing? But anyway, rather than do the more difficult work of looking inside and facing what's there. I went to high school with a lovely girl who was very obsessed with getting married, even as a young teenager. She had a 3-ring binder, sort of the 80s version of the vision board, containing all the things she wanted in her wedding. I remember she was maybe 25 when her boyfriend still hadn't proposed. They were like high school sweethearts. And she was miserable. And it became this really awkward elephant in the room when we'd all hang out as friends. For her, a wedding and being married was necessary for her to feel complete, to feel whole. And it was the result of a lot of societal imprinting. For Gen X and the gens before them, this was how you were supposed to live your life. And if you didn't, that probably meant that there was something wrong with you. You weren't good enough. Sadly, many people married too early or married the wrong person because of this conditioning, and also because internally, it can feel really safe to live life off a script. So those are 5 ways to start to unlearn societal conditioning and let go of toxic narratives and limiting beliefs in order to pursue an internally focused life, more focused on growth. So let's talk about practical ways of starting to do this, along with some red flags about where the challenges might be.
Hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, please subscribe so new episodes find you, and share the show with other deep thinkers in your life. And if you're saying to yourself, damn, I don't have people in my life that I can talk to about this kind of stuff, don't worry, now you do.
You're ready to break out of the matrix. You know that you're more than just a consumer who exists in the world to buy things. And you're aware that societal conditioning can derail you. How do you start to plot a way forward? This isn't like the movie The Matrix, where some robot is going to save you from a large human being farm and usher you away to live with people off the grid. Cutting the cord from the matrix is a mental decision made hundreds of times a day. It's made through a series of conscious choices. Let's get into some practicalities and how we might think about this. So first off, living mindfully. Ugh, it's annoying. This word mindfulness, so cliche now. What does it even tangibly mean to you in action? So living in a state of present awareness means that you're fully aware of your inner world and the role your subconscious plays in your life, including your ego-driven desires. Stuff like all the attachment things I just talked about. Anyone who has tried to sit for 20 minutes in meditation knows how challenging this is. Years ago, I went to a week-long meditation retreat, and by day 4, I was doing great. I was really into it. I was able to still my mind. It was still hard, but I was getting there. I got it. I was gleaning the value of putting my mind on a leash and keeping it from dragging me all over the damn place. Doesn't mean I did it consistently, but I became well practiced in it. Then after 7 days, I left the retreat and I drove back to New York, and I lost touch with the experience. Why is it so difficult? Because our entire world is built to distract, numb, and dissociate. Of course, the parts of us who are scared to confront our true nature are going to take every opportunity to avoid being present and still. To know ourselves is to confront difficult truths, and we love to avoid difficult things. So how do we work on this? Well, self-reflection is one. This can be meditation or journaling or therapy. Maybe it's even a podcast, hint, hint, or reading philosophy or spiritual books. What you're aiming for here is to get curious about the unconscious patterns in your life. You want to cultivate awareness of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. What's going to challenge you? Well, start living in an always-on culture that wants you to stay distracted. that wants you to watch 4 hours of YouTube a day while scrolling TikTok. Oh, wait, I have to use another example now. TikTok is offline as of the recording of this show. But anyway, the corporate industrial complex wants you to eat your lunch at work while you're doing your emails. They want you to be thinking about what you need to buy at the store while you're having a conversation with your friend. The other day, I caught myself being absolutely ridiculous. I was on the train, listening to a podcast, reading a magazine, and intermittently responding to texts. And this felt completely normal to me until I checked myself. It's a hard habit to break because everyone is distracted today, so it feels normal and acceptable, but it's not. I now make a point of putting my phone away when I'm meeting with people in person. If I need to keep it out for whatever reason, I say why and promise to only check a message if it's really time sensitive. I'd like to drop a plug here for my friend Christian Madsberg's book called Look, How to Pay Attention in a Distracted World. It's a lovely read with a lot of great examples of why paying attention is so crucial to a well-lived life. Values to action alignment is another practical tip about unlearning societal influences. Are you in touch with your values? Hopefully you've got the big ones covered. You're not killing people or stealing or things like that. But have you really thought about the person you want to be? For example, I would say that gossip is unhealthy and unconstructive and not nice. I would be ashamed if I learned someone viewed me as being a gossip. I don't want to be that. So how do we not be that? Well, we don't do it, right? I mean, it seems easy enough. This means making a conscious choice not to gossip and being in control of our mind enough to catch ourselves when we're about to act in that way. To go back to my mindfulness example, I intellectually believe that being present is a good thing. I know it makes me happier. I know that it makes people enjoy my company more when I'm present and attentive to them. So then I have to be able to catch myself in the restaurant when I feel the urge to check my phone when out to dinner with a friend. I have to circumvent that desire and correct the urge by reminding myself, and repetitively, else it won't stick, about the behaviors I want to do which align to the character I want to have. 3, living with compassion and acceptance. So you're setting out to fully get to know yourself. Guess what? Spoiler alert, you're going to find some unpleasant facts. Without a doubt, you're going to find aspects of yourself which, as I said earlier, will hurt your own feelings. Might trigger shame, maybe a lot of shame. You'll have 3 choices on how you respond here. 1, give up this silly quest and go buy yourself something online to make yourself feel better. 2, beat the shit out of yourself, telling yourself you're a terrible person. That's one of my favorites, by the way. And 3, get to know and embrace all parts of who you are, including flaws and fears. You can't foster growth and inner peace when you don't know who you are or are at war with yourself. Both Buddhism and Jungian psychology stress the reconciliation of opposites, light and dark, self and no self, as a path to wholeness. We're human. We're filled with good and bad and also a lot of contradictions, which leads us to 4, integration of wisdom. As you get to know yourself, you'll need to do something with all that new information. This is the final step, which is synthesizing your insights so that you can better navigate life with clarity and purpose. These steps don't always happen in order, and sometimes you have to go back and revisit them over and over again. The journey isn't linear. It's more like a spiral, and it takes time to unlearn so that we can relearn. There's no right timing or way to experience this process. I'm just sharing some things that have worked for me in case it's helpful. But whatever course you plot, just know that it takes time to sink through and get it on a deeper level. So that's it, really. Simple and difficult, a lifelong practice and process. It's not easy, and there's no medal or prize at the end of it. The gift is in the journey itself, not what you find at the end. So we'll end today with some questions for you to ponder. Are you Ready to know yourself on the deepest level possible? Are you ready to see and accept difficult things about yourself? Can you imagine loving and accepting yourself, even in light of imperfection? Do you wish to create a life filled with meaning and purpose, even if it means abandoning your attachments? When you look inside, are you able to see your specialness waiting to be set free? Share your answers in the comments, and I'll read some of them on our next show, along with my answers. Until next time, remember, you are the change you've been waiting for.